This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It's Monday, June 21st, 2010, and this is episode 736 of WDW Today. I'm Matt Hochberg of StudioCentral.com. Joining me on today's show is Mike Scopa, a senior feature writer and blogger for allears.net. Welcome, Mike.
It's my old college roommate, Judy Peterson.
Stupid Judy.
You know, when I watch Jeopardy now, every time, because it's always funny to me at least, Marissa doesn't think so, but every time that they go to Final Jeopardy and, you know, the music's playing, I feel compelled to say, if you'd like to have your own energy nightmare, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to.
I think it's funny.
Also joining us on today's show is Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. And Mike, if there's someone who's given us a newfound appreciation for that attraction, it's you.
Yes. And, you know, half the stuff that we think is funny our significant others do not think is funny. You get that look? I get that look from time to time. Like, really? You think you're funny? Really?
It's usually the eye rolling, followed by the shaking of the head, followed by the leaving of the room.
And sometimes I get the
sigh.
The deep sigh.
Well, on today's show, we're going to be talking about a topic, you know, what to do that first day you arrive at Walt Disney World. You know, you plan your trips for, in many cases, months, years ahead of time. You're all excited. The day finally comes. You fly down to Walt Disney World. You get there, and you realize, what am I going to do? Because you're arriving there, and you're not exactly sure what to do because it's not like you have a full day, and different situations warrant different responses to that. And certainly, we get a lot of emails about that. I'm arriving at Walt Disney World. And you know what? Before we can even jump into this topic, what to do on your arrival day at Walt Disney World, Scopa, you want to kind of clarify as to what we're talking about, because depending on what time of the day you arrive will determine what we recommend for you to do.
Yeah, when we're thinking about talking about this, Matt, we said, well, you know, there's a lot of variables here that we have to take into consideration. And one of the variables is the time of day that you arrive on the property. Is it going to be 9, 12, 3 o'clock, maybe even 6 o'clock? That's number one. Number two, I think we have to think about what day of the week. And number three, what kind of weather's going on? What time of the year? You know, what we'll do is we'll probably focus on maybe just one time of the year or whatever, and maybe not even touch upon the weekday as I don't think that's as important as the actual time of the day that we arrive. So we're going to try to focus on that, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of differences we come up with.
And don't forget something also that you might want to consider. There's also your ticket media that you have. Because if you have an annual pass versus a Magic Your Way ticket, there's a whole different scenario that presents itself.
That's right.
So let's assume you're arriving. Let's assume you're taking the Mike Newell flight.
Yes.
Which is the
5:30 a.m. out of LaGuardia.
Exactly. The 6 a.m. flight that gets you, basically you're getting to Walt Disney World before noon. So anytime before noon, let's say. 11 a.m., 10 a.m., but not early enough to be like, say, like 8 a.m. or something like that, where you'd be able to theoretically be at the park for park opening. It's going to be after park opening, but before noon. So let's start with, I don't know, Scopa, where would you like to start with this?
All right. So let's say we're getting to the park sometime between 11:30 and 12 o'clock.
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to avoid the studios. I'm going to avoid Animal Kingdom this time of year because Animal Kingdom is going to get just too hot by the time I get there. And the studios, I would want to do certain attractions that are probably going to be really crowded by the time I get there. So I'm thinking of either the Magic Kingdom or Epcot, and probably Epcot because by then I think that most people are going to be in Future World doing things, and the World Showcase is probably just maybe an hour. Had been open for an hour, so I would probably go for Epcot first and probably do World Showcase, and then eventually work my way to Future World. And for the night, I might stay there or go over to the Magic Kingdom.
I like your choice of Epcot, Mike. I know when I used to, before I moved down to Walt Disney World, and whenever I would used to arrive, if I was arriving during the daytime to Orlando, Epcot was always my park that I picked. I thought it was a good park for that kind of touring because so much of it is a self-guided aspect of it. I mean, obviously World Showcase is a huge part of that. The attractions, though popular, are manageable even if you arrive a little bit later. If you're got, and again, even if you have a Magic Your Way ticket or an annual pass, regardless, I still think you're arriving early enough that it's not a waste, so to speak. If you're a Magic Your Way pass, obviously annual pass, it's more power to you. You might as well go anyway. But I don't think that early in the morning is going to be a quote unquote waste of a day. Noel, what do you think about arriving early in that? Because obviously you like that early morning flight.
Even though I arrived early, I would sometimes even go try to check in because you never know.
Well, that's a good point, Mike. I'm glad you brought that up because what would you guys do? Would you go to the hotel first to check in? I mean, assuming you're taking Magic Your Way, you have no choice. But I mean, in an ideal world, are you checking in first or are you going straight to the park?
Well, you're right. If you're doing Magical Express, they bring you there anyway first. So it behooves you not to try to check in. The worst they're going to tell you is no, your room's not ready. But sometimes, I mean, who was it? Henry, I think, checked into during 10th event. He checked in somewhere 4:30 in the morning, and the room was ready.
Yeah, that's right. The Henry Work, who's a developer for TouringPlans.com, and of course, hosts the Beta Mouse podcast. Yeah, that's right. It never hurts the choice. Now, let me ask you this, Scopa. You're obviously Mr. Rental Car. You love to rent your cars and drive yourself. If you're arriving for that early morning flight, do you go to the resort first or do you go to the park first?
I go to the resort first because I may want to change my clothes. I may want to just get all my stuff in the room because if I go to the parks first, Matt, and then I stay till the park closes and it's 10, 11 o'clock, I don't really want to spend time going over and checking into the room and then dragging my luggage and everything. I want everything in the room taken care of so that I can go and not worry about it. I go to the park, and so at the end of the day, I can just go back to my room.
I see. It's interesting you guys brought that up because I really think I'm the opposite, and this is just my personality. I don't think what you guys, both of you said was wrong. I would, if it was me, I know me, and the way I would do it is I would throw my luggage, in my rental car, drive to the parks, and go straight to the parks. I mean, I didn't want to waste a single moment because I'd be so excited about the trip, and that was always something I figured, hey, you know what, I'll come in late. It doesn't bother me to check in late because Newell, you brought up a good point. I think it was you, Newell, or maybe it was Mike. Anyway, somebody brought up a good point that after a long day in the parks, if you're coming back at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, do you really want to start doing the check-in process, which I can understand. But to me, I'm the type of person. My personality is it burns a hole in my pocket knowing that I'm not in the parks yet, even though I'm out Walt Disney World property. Good. So now let's fast forward a little bit. Now let's say you're getting to Orlando a little bit later. You're getting to Orlando, let's say sometime between after noontime to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So anywhere in there. Scopa, what are your thoughts here on what you would recommend for some people to do in that situation?
Okay, at that point, I don't expect that I'm going to be able to do a lot of attractions with FastPass. So
you're still saying go to the parks?
I'm saying go to the parks. Yeah. Again, if you have an annual pass,
okay.
And it's if you don't have an annual pass, well, it's up to the individual if they want to burn a day. But if you have an annual pass, I think the first thing I'm probably going to do is I'm going to go to a park where I think I could go and have a nice sit-down meal, because if I've been traveling all day, I may not have eaten. I may want to have a nice meal, and I probably want to have a nice sit-down meal and then have a nice relaxing evening. So with that, I got to go with Epcot, Matt, and I'll tell you why, because I think there's more sit-down opportunities in Epcot than in any other theme park. There's a possibility, of course, if you go to the Magic Kingdom, you've got a few sit-down restaurants, but you have more sit-down restaurants at Epcot. So later in the day, I'm still going to Epcot because of that important aspect, and that is that there's just more chances of having a sit-down meal.
I think this time of the day is the hardest one to determine because you still got a decent amount of park hours. And again, depending on the time of year you go, if you're going in the summertime, park hours are obviously much longer. If you're going first week of February, not going to have a whole lot of park hours there, so it's harder to warrant burning that day. I think it also depends on the ticket you have. If you're obviously annual pass, we already know it goes without saying, you can feel free to go because there's no additional cost. But if you've got a Magic Your Way ticket, I think it depends if you decide to go to the parks or not. It depends on the park ticket that you have. Let's say you're coming for the weekend and you have like a 3 or 4 day pass. In that situation, it's hard to say because the value of each day is so much more versus if you're coming for, let's say you have a 10-day pass or above 6 or 7 days. I mean, the cost of the difference in price per day is like a couple dollars literally. So burning that day, so to speak, is not a huge deal on that trip. But I think it's the hardest decision that you're going to find throughout all these times because you're right on the cusp of there, and certainly there's a huge difference between if you're arriving at noontime versus arriving at 2:30. And of course, when we're talking about these arrival times, I think we're meaning arriving on Disney World property and being ready to go. Like, okay, now I can go do something. What would you do? Newell, what are your thoughts on this noon to 3 option?
That time, that's an interesting time. It's a hit or miss, but I'm with Mike. I would go to Epcot, and I would go there mainly because it's the easiest park for me to get in and out of. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to get in there, park, and be inside the gate in a matter of minutes, as opposed to the Magic Kingdom or Animal Kingdom or even the studios. So you want to get the most out of the few hours that you're going to have in the early afternoon, then run back, check in, and then plan your night.
Right. I think if you're one option Scopa brought up was the dining option, because obviously if you are arriving between noon and 3, you have spent most of your day already traveling in one capacity or another. And if you're going to elect not to spend a park day in the park, if you're deciding, what, I'm going to take it easy a little bit and I'm not going to go right at it. I like the idea of that meal, Mike. I think making that, late lunch reservations are great. It's very easy to get in most places. And it might be that perfect day, start out your day with a nice meal at one of the resorts and have a nice meal there. And then, start incorporating some, resort specific or even downtown Disney type entertainment for your options there.
Mike is right. That's the best time to do a resort meal because in the morning everybody's rushing in and rushing out to get to rope drop, and then at night everyone's rushing in and rushing out for dinner. So that afternoon, 4 o'clock, say early bird type dinner, that's the best right. time, the most relaxing time to do a resort dining.
Good point. All right, let's talk about now. You're arriving. Let's say 3 o'clock on to 7 o'clock. Let's say.
Well, your room's going to be ready, so you go right to the resort.
Your rooms are guaranteed to be ready by 4. So,
right.
Scopa, what do you think about that time?
All right, now again, let's take. I'm going to take extended hour time of the year and non-extended hour time of the year. If it's extended hours, I'm thinking, which park has extra magic hour evening? And I would have to consider that park. I'd have to consider how tired I am, because if I'm arriving that time of the day, I probably maybe have worked during the day and then flown down. I may be really tired, so I'm not sure how much energy I have. So those are two considerations. I think that one of the things I would think about is just getting settled, getting in my room, maybe just hanging at the resort for that evening, and getting a nice, relaxing evening in, settling down, having a good night's sleep so I could start up early the next day. I think that the only exception would be if I happen to be staying at Boardwalk, Beach Club, the Yacht Club, and I could maybe have a nice meal around that area and then maybe shoot over to Epcot, walk over to Epcot to watch Illuminations. But other than that, I think I'm pretty much going to stay at my resort for the evening.
That's a good point. Now that we're talking about staying at the resorts now and not so much park-related activities, this might be a good time in the show to talk about what you can do. We talked about dining. That's a huge aspect we've already mentioned, making that, having a great meal to start off your vacation, be it a lunch or dinner. What are some other options that you guys like to do outside of the parks as a great means of starting off your vacation as a, an activity? It may cost money, it may be free, that you would recommend for that first arrival day.
Okay. Well, a lot of things that there are a lot of things out there, but if I'm arriving, let's say it was a June night, like tonight. Let's say I arrived like 6 o'clock and didn't know what to do. What I would think about doing is probably if I wasn't hungry, I think I'd actually go do some Fantasia Gardens golfing. I think I'd do that just to get out in the fresh air and not worry about crowds and stuff, and just have a nice relaxing evening. And then maybe after that, right around maybe 8 o'clock. Maybe look for something at the resort for a late night meal, and then I would just call it a day. I think that that would be one thing that I would do. Maybe going down to downtown Disney, walking around down there, unless it was a Friday or a Saturday night, which was too crowded for me.
Right, some good options there, Mike. I like the mini golf idea. Some other ones, the boardwalk area in general is a great area, and that's right next to the mini golf. Well, some of the mini golf, I should say. There's also mini golf at Blizzard Beach in that area, but boardwalk's a great area to go enjoy. I also enjoy, at the same token, walking around downtown Disney is an obvious answer. It's a great way to go spend an evening or an afternoon. Certainly, if you're coming in late afternoon, downtown Disney is a great option because it really packs in at nighttime. But that afternoon time, it's still a little more manageable. There's less people over there, and I find that a great time to kind of enjoy that area of the resort. Noel, what are some other places that you like to do, where you like to go, non-park activities that you would recommend as good first day arrival stuff?
We've gotten there early enough but late enough to do a park, especially like you said, if you have APs, it's different. But if you don't have the tickets, we've taken out boats at the Old Key West, alongside the Seskalula River.
Love it.
Yeah, and we've even went as far as driving over to downtown Disney and, docking the boat and grabbing a sandwich at the Earl Sandwich and going back onto the lake and just making an afternoon of it before, you decided to, check out the resort a little bit, just hang around the resort.
Absolutely. Another option I really like is, if you arrive late, that's okay. You don't want to burn a park day, but you know what? If you're staying in the Magic Kingdom resorts, or if you can get to the Magic Kingdom resorts, go check out the electric water pageant. Watch Wishes from one of those resorts. There's a lot of activities that you can do there in the evening and not use that park day. Now, of course, if you have an annual pass, then you're kind of in an advantage here, because even if you're arriving and you can only get like 2 hours of park time, that may be worth it to you. Maybe you want to go in and just ride, the TTA and grab some popcorn, and that's going to be your and watch Wishes or something, or maybe the Main Street Electrical Parade if you're getting there during the summertime, and that might be an option for you right there. In that you have that's the beauty of the annual pass, is that you can have that option. In fact, by going to the park for just 2 hours, you're actually getting more value out of it, as opposed to the people with the Magic Your Way tickets, where if you're going for just 2 hours, you're getting less value out of your ticket. Any other ideas for people who are considering their first day arrival stuff and they're looking for either in park or out of park stuff to do?
I think that when you're arriving late in the day, Matt, and you are pretty much convinced that it's not in your best interest to go into the park, it might be time to check something that you've always wanted to do but hesitated because it took away from your park time, like let's say you knew that you were going to arrive at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you weren't going to go to the park. So if you knew this well in advance, then maybe you could go see Cirque du Soleil. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you could do something that you had in Pleasure Island, go visit Pleasure Island. Or maybe even go have a meal at Trail's End, which a lot of people frown at because they don't want to go off the beaten path. They don't want to take the time, and it does take time to go over to Trail's End. So I'm thinking that there may be something that people have, put off in the past because they would take away from their park time. But if you've already decided that you're not going to go to the park that particular late afternoon, early evening, then maybe that's the time to do something that you've always wanted to do before, and now you get a chance to do it.
Hey, great point. That's a great option, Mike. And you know what? Do that thing that you've been meaning to do, but you haven't had a chance to do. And I think that's a great way to spend that first day. And if you're arriving really late, if you're working that day or whatever, and you can't get out, and you can only your flight arrives like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. I think the thing to do also is go to your resort, try to get a good night's sleep there, because obviously you're gonna have a full schedule as you move forward for the rest of your trip. So you want to get off on a good start and not be, already dragging on the first day. So if you can help it, it's a good way to do it. So hopefully this would help some people. There's a lot of great options, and there's a lot of activities. And jelly rolls, Cirque du Soleil you mentioned, Mike.
Yeehaw Bob's.
Yeehaw Bob,
yes.
Right? Great, another great option. There's so much stuff to do in the evening, and it's just about what you're going to have time for and what you're feeling is worth your investment, so to speak, be it in your park admission or how much you're willing to spend. So Hopefully this is helpful to some people who are looking to, figure out what they're going to do that first day and be able to enjoy it somewhat. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Don't forget that our live show is this Sunday on Sunday, June 27th at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time.
Radio.
Right here on Mouse World Radio. You can tune in. Just go to www.today.com. All the details are over there. Check us out, and you'll be able to get all that information. If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, you can visit the WDW Today website at wdwtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, and Mike Newell, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.
Stupid Judy, stupid energy.
This has been a production of Mouse World Radio.